vaccinate one? The answer is £82.
Welcome back. Last show of the week with Roman Chishti, Gemma Forte, and Donald McIntyre is our special guest. He's going to bring you all the other headlines shortly. But right now we're going to hear what you make of these government plans for a massive expansion of the badger cull to rein in bovine TB. 0207 5555 is the number. Bovine TB, as you know, is a big problem. It's rife in the West Country and in Wales. Cattle that test positive are automatically destroyed. 29,000 died last year, although farmers are reimbursed by us, the taxpayer, to the tune of £100 million a year. Now, back in 2013, when ministers gave the green light to train farmers to kill 100,000 badgers, the aim was to eradicate bovine TB within 25 years. And they began in two areas, a little bit of Somerset, a little bit of Gloucestershire. But the shooters quite literally failed to hit the target, slaying fewer than half the number needed to curb TB. And yet the scheme was enlarged to include Dorset in 2015 and then rolled out to include parts of Cornwall, Herefordshire and Devon last year. And it still hasn't worked. Why? Well, according to the former Environment Secretary Owen Paterson, it's because, quotes, the badgers kept moving the goalposts. I can't say that on national television, but culling has now been extended to take in Wiltshire and Cheshire. 33,000 of these beautiful and protected creatures must now be shot in 21 areas, despite the chief vet, Nigel Gibbons, telling Radio 4 just the other day there's still no evidence culling works.
In the culling trial results don't really appear until the fourth year, so we wouldn't expect them to appear particularly early, and two areas are a small sample to see an effect.
Why then extend if you haven't got conclusive evidence? You knew you wouldn't get that until after 4 years. Why not wait until then before you decide to extend?
So the evidence that the policy is built on already exists. Of course, we're looking to see when the benefits of the policy start to accrue.
Is there a better way? Well, they vaccinate badgers against bovine TB in Wales, and it's a fraction of the cost. In fact, it costs us 85 times more to shoot them, and 94% of Welsh herds are disease-free compared to 84% in England, which suggests there is a better way. Now, the cull, of course, was briefly halted in 2014 after an independent scientific assessment declared it neither humane nor effective. And then there's the so-called Krebs trial that found if marksmen didn't hit their targets, badgers, under persecution, would move to new territories, thus increasing the spread of bovine TB. I'm getting... It seems to me that Wales is way ahead of us on this, Ren.
Well, look, Matthew, I've got to say, I'm no expert in science. I've got to go with the information that's before me. We've got to find a way which is humane, respects our wildlife, and also at the end of the day ensures that we address one of the key issues affecting our biodiversity and also animal welfare, which is bovine TB. In 2016, 29,000 cattle had to be put down in our country because of bovine tuberculosis. So I would say we've got to find a comprehensive strategy, and we talk about the issue of culling.
Oh my goodness, sounds like a politician.
No, but look...
Is it good or bad?
No, but what I say with culling, from 2015 to 2017, we suspended vaccination because the supply of vaccination available to tackle tuberculosis was not available around the world. And it was either a choice, but either we use that for human purposes or we use it for badgers. And I think because of the shortage supply of vaccination, then they had to go back as one method of with badger culling. So I would say you have to look at, whether you control the movement of cattle, you look at vaccination, and if you have to, as a last resort, do badger culling, then you have to do it as a comprehensive strategy. But what I would say, England has the worst record of an infection of tuberculosis than anywhere else in Europe. So we have to find a overall strategy.
New Scientist, you said you want to look at the science. Well, New Scientist magazine, the latest issue, says culling doesn't work. So how much more expert advice do you need than scientists in New Scientist magazine saying it doesn't work?
Well, just one thing on
and
that.
It's also very expensive.
Sure. Just one thing on that. Where the culling doesn't work, or where vaccination works and doesn't work. Vaccination works where the badger hasn't been affected. If the badger has been affected and it has tuberculosis, then vaccination will not work and you have to go with culling.
But it's about 15% of badgers, I believe, when they're dead and they're test positive for TB. So we could be out there chasing, shooting and killing an awful lot of badgers that pose no risk to our cattle at all. Gemma?
Yeah, I think, and that's another interesting point, is there's even a question mark over whether the badgers are giving the cattle TB in the first
I think
place.
they do, but there are many other possible
Yeah, it's
causes.
more of a risk that, you know, the cows infecting each other.
Possibly.
So it's cruel because you're killing a load of animals who don't have TB. So just a lot of innocent badgers, if you like, being slaughtered in methods that aren't very humane. It's proven not to be effective because they didn't meet their targets anyway. It's extremely costly, and there are other ways that are potentially much more effective.
But if you don't have access, say the argument, Remen's argument stands up, you don't have access to the vaccine, do you cull in the meantime? Do you cull in anticipation of science down the road saying actually culling can work?
No. I don't think so. Listen, I know that the farming industry is going through a really tough time like everything else at the moment. I understand that the argument for is that bovine TB has a devastating impact on our beef and dairy farms. But that's not an argument to cull badgers. It's a problem that has to be solved.
Because culling has been a big story in Ireland.
Well, it has,
and
yeah,
it's broadly viewed as being successful in Ireland.
Well, my view is that, and I'm with Brian May, who has been on the show a couple of times, and he's a rocker and animal rights campaigner and physicist, and he has been one of the most forthright campaigners, if I'm honest, probably one of the key campaigners in the country. I think it's cruel, it's unnecessary, and most of all, it's irrational.
But it's also cruel to have thousands and thousands of cows put to slaughter, and we have to address that as well.
If you want a beef farm, beef cows, one of the biggest contributors to global warming. So the farming lobby have fought this agenda on the basis of no science for many years, and yes, they're going through a tough time now, but they've had the heydays of 30 years of EU and gargantuan grants and all this. So, the farming lobby have been irrational on this. They've fought their campaign, a well-fought campaign. They should lose it on the basis of science. And I get Ray supporting the government no matter what.
No, but it's not supporting the government. It's not supporting, but what I'm saying, if you're saying you've got to look about suffering,
a campaign that you know doesn't work.
I'm saying you've got to take a proportionate approach. But what I would say with terms of suffering, you talk about suffering of badgers, but when cows get TB, in terms of suffering that they get, and then you have to deal with it. So I'm saying, look, take a balanced approach rather than just one.
Cows are killed when we want meat. So I'm just trying to say these are beautiful animals and they should be celebrated as part of a fauna.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, it's always an emotional subject because, of course, we view certain animals as we judge them by their appearance, by their looks, and badgers are clearly very popular. After the break, we're going to hear what you think. Do you support